A young African man saves an injured lion. What happens next is unbelievable. The thunderous roar of rain against the tin roof of Jabari's modest hut had finally subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence that always followed the violent storms of the Serengeti. At 23, Jabari Adofo had weathered many such tempests in his village on the outskirts of the vast savanna. But something about this particular storm had felt different, more ferocious, more determined to reshape the landscape. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the lingering clouds, Jabari stepped outside, inhaling deeply the scent of wet earth and vegetation that the storm had left in its wake. His father had taught him to check their small farm after such storms, to assess damage and begin repairs before the unforgiving sun rose high in the sky. Their livelihood depended on the maize and sorghum they cultivated, supplemented by the few goats they kept in a pen adjacent to their home. Jabari's parents had passed 3 years ago in a road accident while traveling to the city to sell their surplus crops, leaving him to care for his 2 younger sisters, Amara and Zara, who were still asleep inside the hut. Clutching a wooden walking stick and with a machete secured to his belt, Jabari set out to inspect their land. He navigated carefully through the muddy pathways between crops, noting with relief that most of their plants had survived the deluge. The goats bleated nervously as he passed their enclosure, still agitated from the night's thunderous performance. He patted their heads reassuringly before continuing toward the perimeter of their property, where it met the wild grasslands. It was there, at the boundary marked by a row of acacia trees, that Jabari noticed something unusual. One of the largest trees had been uprooted by the storm, its massive trunk now lying across the invisible line that separated cultivation from wilderness. But it wasn't just the fallen giant that caught his attention. It was the low, pained growl emanating from beneath its sprawling branches. Jabari approached cautiously, his grip tightening around his walking stick. As he drew nearer, his breath caught in his throat. Pinned beneath the thick trunk of the acacia lay a male lion, its golden mane matted with mud and blood, its powerful body trapped and rendered helpless by the weight of the fallen tree. The creature's amber eyes fixed on Jabari, not with the ferocity he might have expected, but with a mixture of pain and resignation that struck him deeply. In his village, lions were both revered and feared. They were symbols of strength and courage, yet they were also predators that occasionally took livestock and, in rare tragic instances, human lives. The elders taught that lions were to be respected from a distance, never approached. Jabari knew he should return to the village and alert the others. Perhaps they would contact the wildlife rangers who occasionally passed through the area. That would be the sensible course of action. Yet something held him in place. Perhaps it was the labored breathing of the magnificent beast, or the way its eyes seemed to communicate a desperate plea. Jabari had always felt a connection to animals that others in his village didn't quite understand. Since childhood, he had been able to approach even the most skittish creatures, earning him the nickname Mpenzi wa Wanyama, the animal lover. "I should leave you," Jabari murmured, more to himself than to the lion. "It is not my place to interfere with nature's decisions." But even as he spoke, he knew he wouldn't walk away. The lion's front paws were free, and one of them was clearly injured, bleeding from what appeared to be a deep gash. Its hindquarters were completely trapped beneath the tree trunk, but from what Jabari could see, they seemed intact, no protruding bones or unnatural angles to indicate severe damage. Jabari retreated a safe distance and sat on a rock, considering his options. His grandfather had been a healer, knowledgeable in the ways of treating both humans and animals. He had passed some of this knowledge to Jabari before his death, teaching him which plants could stop bleeding, which could reduce swelling, and which could fight infection. But treating a lion was an entirely different matter than treating a goat or even a human. After nearly an hour of deliberation, Jabari made his decision. He returned to his hut, where Amara and Zara were now awake and preparing a simple breakfast of porridge. "Brother, you look troubled," said Amara, who at 17 was perceptive beyond her years. "There is a lion trapped under a fallen acacia at the edge of our land," Jabari explained, gathering various items into a woven bag, a water gourd, clean cloths, and several bundles of dried herbs. Zara, only 14, gasped. "Dai, you must tell Elder Kamal. He will know what to do." Jabari shook his head. "Elder Kamal would say to let nature take its course, or to kill the lion before it can harm our livestock." "And that is not what you plan to do," Amara stated, recognizing the determination in her brother's eyes. "No, I cannot explain it, but I must try to help this creature," Jabari said, securing the bag over his shoulder. "Stay inside until I return. If I am not back by midday, go to Elder Kamal's compound." Despite their protests, Jabari was resolute. He added a rope and a small axe to his collection before heading back to the fallen tree. The lion remained where he had left it, though its breathing seemed more labored now, its powerful chest rising and falling with evident effort. "I am going to help you," Jabari said softly as he approached, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "But you must understand that I am not your enemy." As if comprehending his words, the lion's aggressive growling subsided slightly, though its wary gaze never left Jabari. With extreme caution, Jabari began clearing smaller branches away from the lion's body, all the while maintaining a respectful distance from its powerful jaws and free front paws. The task of freeing the lion seemed impossible for one man alone. The trunk that pinned the beast was massive, far too heavy for Jabari to lift or move significantly, but years of farming had taught him about leverage and the strategic use of his limited strength. He began to dig beneath the tree trunk, near the lion's trapped hindquarters, creating space that might allow the animal to pull itself free once there was enough clearance. Hours passed as Jabari worked tirelessly under the increasingly hot sun. He paused occasionally to offer water to the lion by pouring it into a depression in the ground within reach of the beast's mouth. To his surprise, the lion lapped at the water cautiously, its eyes never leaving him. "You are beginning to trust me, Mfalme," Jabari said, using the Swahili word for king. "That is good, because what comes next will not be pleasant for either of us." By midday, Jabari had managed to create a sizable hollow beneath the tree trunk. Using branches as makeshift levers and rocks as fulcrums, he prepared to attempt to raise the trunk just enough for the lion to free itself. The challenge was ensuring his own safety when the moment came. A frightened or injured lion was unpredictable, regardless of any trust that might have developed. Jabari had positioned his levers strategically and now began to apply his weight, grunting with exertion as the massive trunk shifted slightly. The lion seemed to sense the opportunity, its muscles tensing visibly as it prepared to move. With one final, tremendous effort, Jabari managed to lift the trunk a few crucial inches. "Now, Mfalme, pull yourself free," he shouted. The lion responded instantly, summoning its remaining strength to drag its hindquarters from beneath the tree. As soon as the animal was clear, Jabari released the trunk, which crashed back to the ground with a dull thud. He immediately retreated to what he hoped was a safe distance, his heart pounding in his chest. The lion had managed to move several feet away from the fallen tree, but now lay on its side, panting heavily. It made no attempt to stand or to flee, which concerned Jabari. He could see now that the damage was worse than he had initially assessed. The lion's right hind leg was clearly injured, possibly broken, and there was a long gash along its side that was still bleeding. Against all conventional wisdom, Jabari decided to continue his intervention. He approached the lion again, speaking in low, soothing tones. You cannot walk and you cannot hunt. Without help, you will die, Mfalme. Let me treat your wounds. Whether from weakness, pain, or some inexplicable understanding, the lion remained still as Jabari knelt beside it. With trembling hands, he began to clean the wound on its side using water and the clean cloths he had brought. The lion flinched and growled but did not strike out at him. Encouraged, Jabari applied a poultice of herbs that his grandfather had taught him would prevent infection and promote healing. The leg was more problematic. If it was indeed broken, it needed to be set and immobilized. Drawing on his limited knowledge of animal husbandry, Jabari fashioned a crude splint from straight branches and strips of cloth torn from his own shirt. Throughout the process, he continued to talk to the lion, explaining each step as if the animal could understand him. "And I must return home now, Mfalme," Jabari said, once he had done all he could. "My sisters will be worried, but I will come back tomorrow with food for you and more medicine." As Jabari stood to leave, the lion's eyes followed him, and he could have sworn there was a glimmer of gratitude in that golden gaze. Shaking his head at his own fanciful thinking, Jabari made his way back to his hut, where Amara and Zara were waiting anxiously. "You smell of lion," Amara said accusingly as soon as he entered. "You were close enough to smell of lion." "I had to be," Jabari replied simply, washing his hands in a basin of water. "He was injured and trapped. I freed him and treated his wounds." "He?" Zara's eyes widened. "A male lion. Brother, have you lost your mind?" Perhaps he had, Jabari thought as he described the day's events to his shocked sisters. But something about the encounter had felt predestined, as if the storm had deliberately placed that lion in his path. Over the next several days, Jabari returned to the fallen acacia tree where the lion remained. Unable to hunt with its injured leg, the creature would have starved without Jabari's intervention. He brought meat from their precious stores, sacrificing a portion of their own food to sustain the injured predator. Each day, he redressed the lion's wounds and checked the splint on its leg, marveling at how the powerful beast tolerated his ministrations with increasing patience. Word of Jabari's unusual patience eventually reached the village. Elder Kamal, accompanied by several young men armed with spears, confronted Jabari as he was preparing to make his daily visit to the lion. "What you are doing is dangerous and foolish," Elder Kamal declared, his weathered face stern with disapproval. "You risk not only your own life, but the safety of our entire village. That creature must be killed before it recovers enough strength to hunt our children and livestock." "The lion has had ample opportunity to harm me, yet it has not," Jabari argued. "There is an understanding between us." "An understanding? With a wild beast?" Elder Kamal scoffed. "Your parents' death has affected your mind, young Adolfo. Step aside and let the men do what is necessary." But Jabari planted himself firmly in their path. "I will not allow you to harm him. He is under my protection. You would choose a lion over your own people," one of the young men challenged, brandishing his spear threateningly. "I choose compassion over fear," Jabari replied quietly. "Is that not what our ancestors taught? That all living creatures deserve respect? The standoff might have escalated further had it not been for the timely arrival of a dusty jeep bearing the logo of the National Wildlife Service. 2 rangers stepped out, looking curiously at the assembled group. "We received reports of an injured lion in this area," the senior ranger explained. "And we've come to assess the situation." Elder Kamal immediately launched into a complaint about Jabari's dangerous behavior, but the rangers seemed more interested in Jabari's account of finding and treating the injured animal. They were particularly intrigued by his description of the lion's behavior. "It's unusual, but not unheard of," the female ranger said thoughtfully. "There have been documented cases of lions forming bonds with humans who have helped them. Would you show us to this lion?" Reluctantly, Elder Kamal and his party agreed to accompany Jabari and the rangers to the fallen acacia. As they approached, Jabari called out softly, "Mfalme, I have brought visitors. Do not be afraid." To the astonishment of everyone except Jabari, the lion raised its head at the sound of his voice, but remained calm even as the group came into view. It was only when the armed villagers moved too close that the lion growled a warning. "Remarkable," the senior ranger murmured, observing the interaction between Jabari and the lion. "He's clearly bonded with you." After examining the lion from a respectful distance, the rangers conferred briefly before turning to Jabari. "The lion needs professional veterinary care, but it's also clear that he trusts you. We'd like to propose something unusual." Their proposal was indeed unprecedented. The lion would be transported to a wildlife rehabilitation center where its injuries could be properly treated. But given the unique bond that had formed, Jabari would be offered a position as an apprentice animal keeper, allowing him to continue his relationship with the lion while learning formal wildlife management skills. "We've been trying to increase local participation in conservation efforts," the female ranger explained. "Your natural affinity for animals would make you an ideal candidate." The offer stunned Jabari. It would mean leaving his farm and moving his sisters to the town where the rehabilitation center was located. It would mean abandoning the only life he had known for an uncertain future. But as he looked into the eyes of the lion, his Mfalme, he felt an unmistakable pull toward this new path. "What about my sisters and our land?" he asked. "Your sisters could attend the proper school in town," the ranger suggested. "And perhaps a relative could maintain your land until you decide whether to return." Amara, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Our cousin Jelani has always coveted our farm. He would care for it well, and we could visit during school holidays." Over the following weeks, arrangements were made. The lion was carefully sedated and transported to the rehabilitation center, where veterinarians properly set its broken leg and treated its other injuries. Jabari and his sisters moved into a small house provided by the wildlife service near the center, and the girls enrolled in the local school. Jabari's days were now filled with learning about animal behavior, conservation principles, and the delicate balance between wildlife and human communities. But the highlight of each day was the time he spent with Mfalme, as the lion had been officially named in recognition of Jabari's nickname for him. As months passed, Mfalme's physical recovery was remarkable. The broken leg healed strongly, and the wound on his side left only a pale scar partially hidden by his magnificent mane. The veterinarians began discussing the possibility of releasing him back into the wild. "He's a prime male in his physical prime," the head veterinarian explained to Jabari. "In nature, he would likely head a pride by now. It wouldn't be right to keep him in captivity permanently." Jabari understood the reasoning, but the thought of parting with Mfalme filled him with sadness. He had grown to love the great cat, and he believed the feeling was mutual, as evidenced by the lion's purring rumbles whenever Jabari sat with him in his enclosure. The solution came in the form of a conservation project on a vast private reserve adjacent to the national park. The reserve was establishing a new pride, with several young females rescued from a zoo closure in another country. They needed a male lion to complete the pride, and Mfalme was a perfect candidate. Most importantly, the reserve had a research station where Jabari could continue his work while maintaining contact with Mfalme. The day of Mfalme's release onto the reserve was both joyous and poignant. Jabari accompanied the transport cage to a carefully selected spot where the lionesses had been observed the previous day. As the cage door was lifted, Mfalme hesitated, looking back at Jabari as if seeking reassurance. "Go, my friend," Jabari whispered. "Your new family awaits, but I will still be here, watching over you. With a final glance at the human who had saved his life, Mfalme stepped out into his new territory, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his golden coat as he surveyed his domain. Within days, he had located and been accepted by the lionesses, assuming his natural role as the pride's leader. Jabari kept his promise, dividing his time between his duties at the research station and monitoring Mfalme's pride from a respectful distance. His sisters thrived in their new school, with Amara developing an interest in veterinary medicine and Zara showing talent in wildlife photography. A year after Mfalme's release, Jabari stood on a hilltop overlooking the pride's favorite resting place. Through his binoculars, he could see Mfalme lounging majestically among his lionesses, and to Jabari's delight, 3 small cubs that had been born 2 months earlier. "Your story continues, Mfalme," Jabari murmured with a smile. "As does mine." What had begun with a fallen tree and an injured lion had transformed into something neither man nor beast could have imagined. A new life purpose for Jabari, a second chance for Mfalme, and a powerful reminder of the unexpected bonds that can form when compassion overcomes fear. In the villages surrounding the reserve, people now told the story of Jabari and his lion, a tale that grew more fantastic with each retelling. But the truth of a young man who followed his heart rather than convention, who chose mercy over caution, and who found his calling in the amber eyes of a wounded king, was more extraordinary than any embellished version could ever be. Elder Kamal, who had initially opposed Jabari's actions so vehemently, now brought visitors to the research station to proudly introduce our son who speaks with lions. The old man had come to see that sometimes the most courageous path is not the one dictated by tradition, but the one illuminated by compassion. And sometimes, in the aftermath of a storm, when everything seems broken and displaced, the most meaningful connections are formed, connections that transcend species, that defy explanation, and that change the course of lives in ways that are truly unbelievable.